All right, welcome back. We are COMP125 in the summer 2020 semester, and it is week 11, part 1, but there's not going to really be a part 2 potentially because this is a short week, so we only have a little bit of time to go. So what I'm going to do is start talking about your assignment number 4, which will be the last assignment. Now, these things need to be weighted correctly. Right now they're weighted at 40, and that's not really right. What we have to think about is what the assignments are out of, if I'm not wrong, for the course. And what I've done for you guys is I've removed certain things so that you guys could have a better experience. Right, that's what I've done. So it's on me. And notice you're supposed to have 6 assignments as per the requirement of 10% each. Personally, I think it's excessive in this shorter time frame to get all this done. So I've cut it down to 4. Now 4 times 10 does not equal to 60. So what we need to do is we have to rejig these 4 so that they're 15% each. That's my thoughts. I'll keep the last test, the final test, at 20. So I won't mess with this. And the total weighting will be the same for assignments. That's what this part will be. But you'll just have 15% for each of these. So that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about because that's a change we're going to be implementing. Only because I'm not going to give you 6 assignments. That doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. Does anyone have any issues with that? Because I thought that might be better, you know, and this way you record less, and there's one more assignment left, and I'm going to give you maybe something more interesting to do than what we've been doing so far. So assignment 4, you're going to build a slot machine, and we're going to build a little game is what we're going to do with TypeScript finally. But it's not going to be a crazy game. We're not going to make a 2D game with, you know, enemies and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be more or less a little application that you're going to make, and we're going to use the Html5 Canvas container to do that, and TypeScript to help you out. So I'm going to give you a library to help you, so you're not going to start from scratch because there's a lot of work to do from scratch. And I'm also going to give you some code, so you can start with some code instead of starting with nothing. Okay. So I'm going to talk about all this stuff in a second, but basically what you're going to be doing, and for those people who've never done or don't know what a slot machine is, it looks like this, right? Some kind of digital slot machine that looks like this, okay? Now, this might seem impossible to do, but I'm going to step you through it, part of it today, to get you going, right? To help you. And it's part of it's going to be a learning experience about how to do this. This is also going to set you up nicely when you do the slot machine. It's going to set you up nicely for your final test, which is going to be interactive. Okay, so some kind of user interface. Again, for the final test, you'll have several days to do it. It won't be a true false multiple choice type test because I don't believe in those. So you'll have more of that to do. But this will present you with a little bit more interest in terms of your presentation. One thing you cannot do for this one is you cannot use HTML5 buttons and that kind of stuff. You'll be using actual buttons that you'll be creating or getting from the internet. We'll talk about how to do this in a bit. So, on to how we're going to do this. Basically what this is, if you follow the instructions, there's certain sections. The first part is you're going to create a slot machine interface and logic on the back end. The logic part is worth 28 marks, and the UI is worth 21. UI means getting the buttons in place. There's no logic. You just put everything in place with code that I'll discuss. I'll explain how that can be done. So put stuff in with code. Labels, we'll talk about how to do labels and all that kind of stuff, and how to make buttons work. Buttons will be working with add event listener like we've been using before, but there'll be custom buttons in a canvas element, and we'll talk about what a canvas is in a bit. Okay. I'm also going to be giving you some code, and I've put this up on the assignment document. So if you look up on week 11, again, this is like the third last week of class. So next week is the second last week, and then we have the final test on week 13. Okay, so that's a couple weeks away. This will be due the last day of class, this assignment. So lots of time, a couple of weeks, kind of, to do. And I'm going to help you, like I said, with it today and next week to get you guys going. So my tutorials will be how to do this thing. How to build it, how to do it. It's all going to be on how to help you. It's not necessarily everything is on you for this assignment. Some of it's on me. And the reason why is so I can push you to do things that are interactive and make a web application with TypeScript that makes sense. All right, so that's the exercise. So there's a couple of expectations for this one. One is you're going to be working, when we're together, we're going to be working together to get this done. Okay, so if you don't attend, or if you don't watch the videos, then the assignment will be more difficult. So please make sure for the next couple weeks, this week and next week, you participate in videos, do all those kind of things, so that way you can get everything you need for this assignment and the final test. All right, that's what I'm helping you with. We're also going to talk a little bit about jQuery, just to explain what that is, because the slot machine document, if you actually go in here, so if I open this up, then you're going to see that there are, if I open this up, you're going to see that there's two files I've given you. One is the PDF that describes this assignment, and the other one is this zip file, which is the zip file that gives you some code to make things work. We're going to go into that first. Okay, and this at the same time it'll explain what jQuery is. Okay, in a second. So where is this file that I'm talking about? This zip file, and let me just bring that into being for a second, and we'll talk about it. So I'm just going to move it to my desktop. There it is. So this is the zip file you would have gotten in the assignment right here. I'm going to unzip it on my desktop. Here it is. And let's bring it into, I'll delete that now. Let's bring this into, actually I'll undo that. Hold on a second. Let me bring that into my course for a second, because you will need this later on. Okay, there we go. So I want to bring this into Visual Studio Code. Drag and drop it. And you can see what you get. You get an actual Visual Studio, old Visual Studio application. That's what you get. Okay? And if you notice, let me just get back out of here for a second. There are two layers to this slot machine. The first one is this part. If you wanted to double click this, it would run in Visual Studio 2019 or 2017, whatever you have. I don't recommend it. But what we really need is this inner slot machine folder. That's what we need, not the outer one. And this is just for example. I do not expect you to start your application from this folder. This is not the exercise. Okay? I'm just showing you the code to tell you what you have. Okay? The code is terrible. That's what the code is. And your job, one of your jobs, is to take this code, which is in main.js, this code right here, and rejig it for the assignment. That's what you're doing. Okay, you're going to rejig it. What I mean by rejig it is you're going to make it nicer than this. All right. Part of it you can use, but anything that has a $sign in front of it, this is jQuery. Okay, so the way jQuery works and short order is this. Hey, you kind of call out. It's almost like you're calling out, hey jQuery, I want you to use a selector syntax, just like we do in CSS, to find a particular object, and something with an ID of jackpot on my index.html. That's how it works. And change the text, the inner text of that inner HTML stuff to jackpot, and inject the jackpot amount, the jackpot amount, the winnings inside there. That's what it is. Okay. Notice the use of vars. So this is old code. My expectation for you guys is don't use vars, don't use some of these things, and reuse some of the code into your application. Let me explain why in a sec. Bear with me. There's an explanation for everything. Let's run the thing and see what we get when we run this thing. And I'm running it from within the slot machine folder, not on the outside. If you try and run it from out here, it would not work because there's no index.html here. You have to go inside this folder, in the slot machine folder that's inside slot machine master. Okay? In order for you to understand how this works. I didn't want that. Okay, so let's see if it works. So I'll run light server as normal, and you're going to get a really terrible interface. That's what you're going to get. This interface right here. Okay. This interface is so terrible that there's nothing. There's not even CSS that takes care of it, just like your default CSS. But the way this works is this. The code actually kind of works. You have start off with 500 coins or credits, right? Your jackpot is 500. Your player money's 1,000, right? And it keeps track of wins, losses, and a bunch of stuff. This I I repeat, do not put this in your slot machine. Turn wins, losses, and win ratio. This is for you to understand that your slot machine code in the background is working. This is for you. This is debug code that I've put here inside of my application. Again, I want to mention that this is old code, that it's been around for very many years. And all I've done is, we're going to rejig this code in a second to use it. I'm going to set it up with you guys step by step for your assignment number 4. Okay, so you need to follow along. If I click the spin button, first of all I have to place a bet. See where it says place your bet here? 10. That's the number of credits I'm going to put in there. If I click spin, it's going to generate a number of symbols. Grapes, blank, cherry. All right, randomly. If I spin it again, orange, orange, blank. If I get a blank result in any one of these 3 symbols, then the total winnings is 0. Notice I've lost twice because I've got blanks that I generated every single time I spin. If I click it again, spin. Blank, blank, bell, loss, spin. Grapes, cherry, blank, loss, spin. Cherry, blank, banana, loss. Banana, banana, blank, loss. But if I keep spinning, there's going to be a time where I start to win, right? And you can see here, I won 20 bucks. Cherry, banana, banana. So I got 2 bananas and a cherry, right? Now these strings, these are generated randomly, right? Using random number generator inside of the file. So that's what this thing does. It generates this and gives you money. And then at the end, if I put more money in here, let's say if I put 100, because I have my player money's 950. If I keep putting 100 now, I'm going to lose at 100 at a time, which means eventually I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to, well, I won a lot. That was weird. I'm going to get to the point where I lose all my money, because guess what? That's what casinos do, right? Casinos make you have no money at the end. Let's bet the last $50 I have, and there we go. You ran out of money, and then do you want to play again? If I press OK, it'll just restart the game. Okay, so that's what's there. It's a little random number generator. That's all it does. It's ugly. It's terrible. And you and I have to fix this problem. This is not the exercise that we want. Okay, this is not what we want to do. Okay? So hopefully you get that. All right, so that's this. That's this part. So the exercise is to take this code and repurpose it. Now you can notice there's not a lot. There's just a lot of repetition and terrible code. So one of your jobs that are going to be when you get a web work to do, any kind of web work, it's usually that you don't get a greenfield application. What that means is it's not like you can make your own website half the time. Most of the times you get a website and the client comes to you and says, hey, developer, can you please redo my website and make it better? So this is one of those, this exercise that we're going to do. Okay, make my website better. Make it interactive. Let's not use Jquery anymore. We don't need Jquery. Remember how Jquery works? It says, hey, Jquery, take a look at an element in the index page that has jackpot and inject the jackpot amount. That's what this does. So let's take a look. Index, I look through, hey, there's an ID of jackpot. Guess what's going to happen? We're going to actually inject or change the code that's in here, the text, to whatever I want. That's what it does. That's what Jquery does. Jquery says, hey, get a hook into, or get a reference to this list item with an ID of jackpot, anything with an ID of jackpot, and change the text to something else. So Jquery almost looks like a series of shortcuts That's what it does. And Jquery was created for developers when CSS was terrible and when JavaScript was also bad. Okay? And so Jquery was there to help. It was a helper library, and it was a very popular helper library for many years. Now, JavaScript has evolved, and Jquery is not as required anymore. People still use it because it's popular to use, but it's not required. Notice that there's a bunch of functions. Show player stats, reset fruit tally, reset all. These are a lot of things we could change, but you could leave some of this alone. Like, for example, some of this and some of this. This is okay. This is not good. This needs to change. We're not going to output things in player stats, right? Check the jackpot. This could probably stay the same. The alert, definitely not. I would take the alert away, right? And same thing with show win message and show loss message. I probably would do this differently if I was going to show a message at all. Check range is a little helper function. That's what this does. A helper function where you pass in the value that you're checking, and then you want to check between lower bounds and upper bounds. That's what you're doing. It's almost like and you can write this better, right? You could write this instead of an if else. You can write this as a ternary kind of statement, which we're going to do. This is an important one, reals. What reals does, okay, when this function is called, it determines the betline results. Betline, and again, if you think about the idea here, right, in a graphical application, we have symbols, actual images here instead of text. And that's what we're going to build together over the next week. This, okay? At the end, you're going to hand in your assignment. So you're not going to be necessarily building it alone. Some parts you're going to do by yourself, but most of the times you and I are going to work together. I'm going to give you some help to get this thing done. So to give you a real life, kind of scenario, right, or a study case, if you will, on how to do a case study. That's what it is. Okay, so reals generates the betline. Betline starts a blank, blank, blank. That's what these are. Nothing. It basically, for the betline itself, it's an array of strings, right? That's what it is. And the outcome is also an array of values that are 0. All right, so that's what it does. So every time the reals function is called, it reinitializes this array and reinitializes this array, or these two lists, however you want to see it. And then we spin 3 times, right? So this is a for loop that runs through this code 3 times, and it's pretty long, and some of it is repetitive, all right? But as you can see, it does a couple things. We generate a number, a random number, between 0 and 65. That's what it does. Or actually 1 and 65, right? Because it's 61 to 65 is 0 to 65 plus 1, right? That's what it does. So 1 to 65. If I generate a number between 1 and 27, that's what this says, you're going to get a blank result that's going to be saved inside of the betline array. The betline array is the thing that generates the symbols. So 1 and 27, if it's between 1 and 27, it's going to go in there, all right? If it's between 28 and 37, it's going to be grapes. So not a great amount of numbers, right? Notice as the values are going to get higher, for example, 7s, you have to roll between a 65 and a 65. You can only roll a 65 for this to work, all right, to get a 7 result. So it's very rare to get a 7. That's how this works, okay? So a couple things. So one, you chalk up which one of these symbols you're going to get for every time it runs through this loop, you're going to get one of these symbols, okay? And it's going to be stored in the appropriate spot. So for example, spin is the location of the array. So it starts off at 0, so element 0, element 1, element 2. That's what this does. Element 0, 1, and 2. And then it grabs whatever you randomly roll and puts it inside that slot. Okay, at the end, it returns the betline. That's what it does. It returns the betlines. At the same time, it also takes a tally of blanks, number of grapes, number of bananas, number of oranges, number of cherries that you spun, that you randomly rolled, That's what it does every time you call the reals function. And then you check to see if you want anything. If there's blanks at all, right, then you get nothing. Only if blanks, when we tally the number of blanks, if we tally the number of blanks and there are 0 blanks, right, then you start thinking about, okay, so if there's no blanks, that means we have some other combination, right? And this is what this long list of if, else, if does. Do you have to do it this way? Could we have written it differently? Absolutely, my friends. This can be improved. Will we improve it? It really depends on the time we have. We don't have a lot of time to do this, okay? But this is what this does. Else, if you do have any kind of blanks, then you increment the loss number and you show the loss message. Otherwise, you show the win message. And it really depends on what the winnings are. Winnings are being calculated by the combinations. So for example, let's suppose that I have no grapes and no bananas, but I have 3 sevens. Then I take whatever I bet, which is the amount that I bet in coins or credits, and I multiply it by 100. So I get 100 times whatever I bet. So if I bet 100, then 100 times 100, 10,000 as an example. Okay, that's what happens here. So that is what happens when you get sevens. And I know my alarms are going off now again because people are cooking. Don't you love that alarm? All right, and then the spin button is an actual button that appears on the site. So notice when we had this silly site here, we have the spin button. When you click on it, the way jQuery works, it says, hey, jQuery, find an object with an ID of spin button, add the click event, right, and then execute this anonymous inner function. Okay, that's how jQuery works. Where I don't like jQuery is this idea of click. I mean, it's one of the most common events that you can use, just like on click, but this idea has been deprecated. The idea that you can use some kind of shortcut selector syntax and go .click. We don't like to use this. We want to instead use add event listener, and you can't do that with jQuery. jQuery, you have to use jQuery's methodology, right? Well, theoretically. Otherwise, it just wastes your time. You can do this, but notice there's no variables that were declared. It just says, hey, get a reference to this button. When it clicks onto it, then do this function. That's what it works. So what it does is it says, okay, my player bet is hey jQuery, take a look at a div with an ID of bet entry, and inside of that there should be an input element. Get the value from that input element and assign it to the player bet. Now there's no validation here. Okay, this is just grabs the value from the website. This is the input, right, we're talking about right here. If I go inspect, you can do this yourself too if you download the code. All right. If we go to inspect the elements, right? So let's look at the body, and here's our different parts. So here's the area where the actual slot machine is working. Here's the bet entry area in this div tag, and here's the spin button. Okay, spin button has an ID of spin button. Okay, that's how it works. Okay, so when the spin button is pressed or clicked, right, then what happens is jQuery takes the amount from the input. So if I go to the input, which is up above, this part, the bet input amount. Okay, so here's your bet entry. Inside bet entry, we have this input. Right? Notice that it has an ID of player bet, right? And that's what we're looking at here, with an ID of, bet entry is the input. Inside the div with bet entry, get the input that's in there. If my player money is equal to 0, that means I have no money, and that's a weird way of saying is equal to. Sometimes what happens if I am less than 0 somehow? It shouldn't be, but then, hey, you ran out of money, do you want to play again? If they say yes, then you reset their stats and you show your player stats again. If they say no, then leave it as is. Else, if the player has money and the player bet is greater than the player money, in other words, they're trying to bet something they don't have. They have money. It's not like they have zero, but they don't have enough, right? Then you don't have enough money. That's how that works, right? And if the player bet is less than zero, let's say they put a negative amount, then hey, you have to answer something positive. Otherwise, if they enter an amount that their player bet is less than or equal to the player money, they can kind of bet up to what they have. Then you want to get call the reals function. You want to save the spin result, which is a string, in here. And what you're going to do is you're going to put together a new fruits string where you put together the spin result, a dash, the spin result, a dash, and the spin result. You're going to get 3 spin results. That's what's going to happen here, right? I'm just explaining how this works. And then you're going to change the text of the result div tag, a div tag with an ID of result, or the paragraph that's in there, the paragraph that's inside of a div tag with an ID of result. That's what that is. You're going to change the text to fruits, whatever the string is, okay? Then you're going to determine the winnings, if any. It's going to do its thing. You're going to increase the number of turns, and then you're going to generate your stats, okay? Remember, we don't have to generate stats for our actual application. That's not required. And if all of these fail, let's say you try and enter like an A, B, C, or D or something, then it's going to give you this alert. Okay? So this is how it works, but it's bad. And we need to improve this. And we need an interface to do that for us. We need something to make it look nicer, because the customers come to us and said, hey, Tom and friends, you're my friends. We want you to make this better. We want you to make our website so it's an interactive website and it looks nice and it has images and all that kind of stuff. How can you do this for us? And of course, the answer for us to them is going to always be, yes, Mr. Customer, we can do that, right? Even if you can't, you're going to figure it out. You're going to, you're going to get help, but you're going to take the job, right? As much as possible. If they say to you that you can do it. Now, about jobs, be careful about taking jobs from family and friends. A lot of times you do support, but that's a conversation for another time. So how do we do this? How do we make this better? Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about Jquery, just to get you guys an idea of how this all works. So Jquery is part of our learning. Again, this is a bit deprecated, this library, and I say it only because I don't use it. So for me, it's deprecated, that's for sure. And for most people, they've kind of gone away from it, because a lot of the stuff you can do with vanilla JS. Okay. What it does in the great thing about Jquery, what it does is it has some really cool core functionality. It allows you to do better selection and traversal, or easier selection and traversal from a DOM manipulation perspective than JavaScript used to be like. Okay. Ajax is way easier. Like I said, if I was going to use Jquery, it would be for Ajax, right? And even event management, they've even simplified some of that. Again, to me, it used to have a lot of value. Now, I'm not sure that I would use it almost ever. But this is part of where your code is written. Okay, and that's why we have to talk about it too. So the way to include Jquery, we've done it already. Remember what we did in our last application when we were running COMP125 lesson 10, we actually run Jquery every single time, remember? If I was going to bring up that application for a second, let's just run from last week. I'll bring this in. You can see that every single time we run our application, we're running Jquery. And we're running Jquery right here. Here's Jquery. We're actually launching Jquery every single time, and we're using Yarn, npm to get it, right? That's what we're getting. We don't download Jquery anymore. In the past, what we do is, and I've kind of talked about this before, in the past what we do is we go up to Jquery and then we download Jquery and we'd include it. We don't do that anymore, right? jquery.com. I put that link in eCentennial. We don't do that anymore. We do this. We just kind of include a line in our code for Jquery, okay? So that's how you include it. So last week we had it actually included, and I told you it doesn't take much for us to use it. But going back to this, right? It talks here in the PowerPoint about content delivery network. We also talked about how content delivery networks can have a security flaw. Last week we talked about security at length, but also content delivery networks are pretty cool because if I was going to set up my server, my files on a particular server, then every single time a client came, I would have to, they would have to download my libraries. But if I shared it on a CDN, a content delivery network, then more than one server, anytime you went to any site, for example, popular libraries like Jquery and Bootstrap, you've already got Bootstrap, then your actual site, your files will load faster using a content delivery network than if you try to do everything embedded in your site. That's why I said eventually we're going to move to a CDN, right? So there's some popular CDNs you can use for Jquery, including Jquery CDN, Google CDN for Jquery, and Microsoft CDN. There's a bunch of them. We're not going to use these though. We're going to try and do it locally for our examples, okay? And like I said, the way Jquery works is it does selectors and filters. That's what it kind of works on. So you have syntax like this. Hey, Jquery, take a look at the selector. Once we get the selector, it'll create a reference. That's what this does to that selector. And it'll return a reference to anything that you assign it to. Or you can avoid making a variable at all and use something called selector chaining, where you can say, here's my object, and then I can add a dot after the object and do something to this selector directly without making a variable. So this is where Jquery became very popular, right? Here's an example of some places where Jquery would connect to a paragraph, connect to a object or an element with an ID of facts, connect to an object or element with an ID of plus. And by the way, it's all elements with a plus as a class. So it would return an array or a collection of elements with the plus class, right? This is how it does the selection. Now you might think at the beginning, hey, this is cool, nice and easy and shorthand. The problem is it's shorthand. And once we have shorthand, when you try and read somebody else's code, where developers had a problem is when they would try and read somebody else's code, they would be like, okay, what is this? What am I looking at? Jquery became such shorthand that you could embed elements inside of other elements, inside of other elements, and so it became a mess to look at. And so from a maintainability perspective, it was a bit of a challenge sometimes. Now, unless you knew Jquery. If you didn't know Jquery, you'd have to rewrite a bunch of code. Here's an example of what looks very similar to CSS syntax, and this is what made Jquery really popular. It mirrored what we would do with CSS. So hey, just like a query selector all and query selector, we would say, hey, Jquery, take a look at an object with an ID of facts, and then that paragraph, a paragraph that's inside of an object with an ID of facts, right? Remember the descendants? That's how it works. Here, hey, Jquery, I want you to I want to find all div elements, as an example, that are adjacent siblings of H2 elements. That means like they're next to, they're not inside of. Hey Jquery, find all siblings that of paragraph tags, right? Or sorry, all paragraph tags that are siblings of UL elements. So, and hey Jquery, find all UL elements that are children of div elements, right? That's how it does. So query selector all, kind of in many ways, right? And so this is what made Jquery popular, because if you understood CSS, if you were a non-programmer and you understood CSS, or you didn't like JavaScript, then Jquery was easier this way to use this as opposed to what we're using today. So here's the general form: selector, method name, and then some kind of parameters. And they had built-in methods. For example, things like I want to get the value, I want to set the value, I want to get the text, I want to set the text, right? And so on. So it made Jquery simple. Now, I'm not going to go into Jquery in too much more detail because, like I said, to me, a lot of this you can do with JavaScript. And it's nice in some ways. And it's nice to know, if you looked at a site that had Jquery, how to decrypt it you looked at it and you're like, this isn't what Tom told us in our course. He says, hey, no vars, right? And the reality is it's true. And hey, what is this $sign that we're seeing here? This is JavaScript? Yes, it's jQuery. And $sign is a way of accessing the jQuery object. That's what it is. But we're not going to use this. So I put it here for your reference, this 76-page PDF, but it's really not something that I'm going to require from you for your final. But it's going to help us with the assignment. Okay. All right. So that is jQuery, and we know how to use it. I'm going to set up a brand new application in a second, but first some explanations. So there is something called the Html5 Canvas. I want to put stuff so we can graphically see things. And if you look up Html5 Canvas element, right? And if we go to W3 Schools, it allows us to do things like this, put graphical elements in place. All we need is a canvas tag, all right? That's what we can use. And inside the canvas tag, what we can have is an area that's like a dry erase board. I can put anything in that canvas and erase and redraw it several times per second, and it can give us effects like animation. Here's an example of a canvas. The canvas that has an ID of canvas, my canvas, with a width of 200 and a height of 100. And notice there's nothing inside of that canvas. It just produces this, something that looks like this. Let's do this thing for a second. Okay, so let's start off with this. So I'm going to make a brand new application, right? So I'm going to say new folder. We're starting something new this week. Here's COMP125, and we're going to say in the summer 2020 semester, and it's lesson 11. Okay, so empty folder. Inside that folder, let's do some prep. I'm just going to do it this way this time. I'm going to say inside my folder, I'm going to put a content folder, and I'm also going to put a scripts folder, just because I feel like doing it this way. So content and scripts. Those are the two things I need. And what I want to do is I want to take this folder here and drag and drop it into Visual Studio Code. So starting from scratch takes a little bit of time, but we're going to do it. Notice scripts and content now is there. We're going to make add in an index.html page. It's not going to do much, but we're going to type in the HTML5 and have this. And we're going to call this, again, lesson 11 demo. That's what this does. We're going to include any libraries we need here. We know we're going to have a scripts, an app.js file. For now, we're going to make it an app.ts file because we talked about TypeScript last week, and we're going to continue with TypeScript this week. So I'm going to make a new file. It's going to be called app.ts. We're going to modernize our little app, right? And inside our content, we're going to have a new file called app.css. That's our CSS folder. For now, this is where our custom CSS lives, right? We've got nothing in there. Our scripts in our app.ts, we're going to fix this in a bit, but we want to connect our script here. So we're going to say script source, just like we've done before, /scripts and /app.js. Make sure you change this to JS because browsers don't understand TS. Okay. We need to make TypeScript work like last week, like we talked about. We need a tsconfig.json file. So I'm going to add in a new file, tsconfig.json. We talked about this last week, this tsconfig.json. Now it's going to be part of your assignment. So you need to know how to do this. A JSON file has open curly braces and closed curly braces, like this. I'm going to press Control space, which is going to bring us compiler options. Okay, Control space. And in compiler options, we're going to choose Control space again, and we're going to choose our module pattern. We're going to use a common JS module pattern. Okay. We're also going to use our target. We're going to specify our target as old JS because we're going to do a brand new application, but for an old site. So we're going to say our target is going to be ES5. ES5, ECMAScript 5. And actually, if you don't know, you can press Control space and you can select ECMAScript 5. And then for our source maps, we want to turn source maps on, right? We want to have our source maps be true. And that what that'll do is it'll help us decode our TypeScript. That's what it'll do. Okay? So this little tsconfig.json you need before you start anything with TypeScript. The next part is you got to set up your tasks, right? We want to make sure we transpile app.ts every time we make a change. I don't want to do it manually, so I'm going to press Control Shift and B together, right? And then you're going to get this watch task. The watch task is automatically going to transpile anything it finds with a TS inside the scripts folder, and it's going to create an empty JS file. Notice it just took TS and made it to JS. Okay? That is how we start our code. Are you with me? I want to see that you're with me. Check mark for with me, X for not, hand if you're watching. It's important that I see what you guys are doing because I want to make sure that you guys are all on the same page with me. Awesome. Great. Thank you for that. Some people are watching, some people are actually doing. Okay, so we've got this, right? And we want to use the canvas. So in order for us to do something on the canvas, in my index.html, I need to place a canvas tag. Let's do that now. So we'll call it canvas with an ID of, we'll just call it canvas, right? And inside our canvas element, let's describe a width element of 640 and a height of 480. Okay, so 640 by 480 is what we're going to work with in this example. Now I want to be able to see my canvas because if I was to run this code right now, just the way it is, let's run it. If I just did light-server, again, I haven't downloaded any files or anything like that, right? I'm going to get a blank screen that looks like this, right? I'd like to see my canvas 640 by 480. And the way we're going to do that, right? The way we're going to do that is, I'm just going to make this go to the left and this to the right so we can see both, is we're going to add a little piece of CSS. But in order for our CSS to connect, we need to connect our CSS files up here. Let's do that. So we're going to say link CSS. We're going to say /content and then app.css. That's what's going to link in there. And in my app.css, I want to target anything that has an ID of canvas, right? I want to say that my canvas element that has an ID of canvas is going to have a border, right, of 1 pixel solid black. Save. And now you can see on the right, this is the area that we're going to have our little slot machine working in this little canvas area by default. Are you with me? So canvas is like, think about it as an empty container, and you can make it be as big as you want, okay, or as small as you want. Where this is really good, other than games, right, is for advertising. If I want to make a little ad somewhere and I want some animation, some of the easiest ways to do the animation is to put it inside of a canvas, an HTML5 canvas. I can do a lot of stuff with HTML5 canvas, okay? So that's where it's really useful. Okay, so this is the canvas element. We can see it now. And if you, instead of making it solid, we can make it dotted. So we can say, let's make it dotted so it's not so stark. Okay, so it's like this. We can also put our canvas element, right? So if I look at my canvas in my index.html, I can put my canvas inside of some kind of div tag, right, as an example. And then we can do things like centering it and stuff. Not going to do that here today. All I want to do is just have a canvas area that's right here. Notice it's white because by default the canvas is white. You don't have to specify the background color in order for you to change the canvas to whatever you want. Okay. And to make that happen, what I'm going to say is my background color, here's my background color for the entire page. Let's make it light gray. So again, this is CSS. I'm going to say that in the body tag, my body my body element, my color, so background color, right, is going to be light gray. If I save that, you're going to see that everything is light gray, including the canvas. So now we can say that the canvas also has a background color, right, of white. If we did that, now you're going to see what it really looks like. So this is where the canvas lives. You should be able to clearly see this now. All I've done is use a little bit of CSS and HTML5. There's no JavaScript really at all. Okay, are you with me? So this is where the game would live. If we're going to make an HTML5 game, like a real game, like you put up Facebook and something, I can put it in here. Just from a margins, let's just give a little bit of a margin to the left. So we'll say margin left, and we'll give it like, I don't know, 10 pixels, right? Something that's like, you know, to the left. So at least there's a bit of, you know, kind of something like this on the side. So we don't see it hugging the left completely. This is just from a positioning perspective for the canvas element. We could definitely center it. We can do all kinds of stuff. For now, let's just do this. Okay, so we've done color in the background. We've done the canvas element, and this is where we're going to do our masterpiece in here. This is where our slot machine is going to live in here, not up here. All right, and we're not going to use standard buttons from HTML5 or anything. We're going to make our buttons from scratch in here. But how do you operate the canvas? So let's go back to that stuff online for a second, and I just want to go to W3 Schools. So canvas, yeah, we select the canvas. We can definitely do a style, 1 pixel solid black, like it shows it here. If I want to draw a line, it becomes pretty crazy, right? I want to say I need to define my canvas with a context. So the canvas can have two different contexts: a 2D context, which means I can make something 2D, or a 3D context. Typically we don't use that. We use WebGL for 3D, right? But we could make a context, and you got to define that context, right? So first we connect to the canvas with a little bit of code. So document.getElementById canvas, and then we set the context of the canvas, right, to 2D. Okay? And then what we do is with that context, almost like a reference, we could move, think about an invisible pen that moves to a specific spot on the page. By the way we draw our canvas is the top left corner of the canvas. That means this up here is the 0, 0 point from an X and Y coordinate perspective. I march to the right when I do positive X, and I march down when I do positive Y. So positive Y is actually down, which is counterintuitive a lot of times. But the top left corner of everything we put on our canvas is 0, 0. Okay? So that means if I move to 0, 0, I'm moving to the top left corner of the page. And then I want to move my line to 200, 100, which means I'm going to move across 200 pixels, approximately something like that, and then 100 down to about here. Okay? And then I'm going to stroke the line. I'm going to create the stroke. So it's going to go from here to there. And that's what this is. That's how it works. This line is a group of pixels, my friends. You cannot select it. You cannot delete it. You cannot do anything with it. And it's just going to sit there. It's not going to update. That's how the canvas works. Circles are very similar. In this case, all you're doing is designing a path, right? And you can see that to do a lot of work like text or something like that, what we're actually doing when we do text is we're rasterizing or converting our font into pixels. Notice I cannot select this text. I can't, even if I want to. This, in this little canvas right here, as an example, is not font. It is pixels. I can't select pixels. I can select text like this, but not pixels, right? And that's what happens when we change our text into, put it on a canvas. It becomes pixels. I want you to remember that. Right? Everything on the canvas, everything on this thing is pixels. That's it. Okay? So that's how you do canvas. And this would take a long time for us to make, you know, a game, especially things like a slot machine, with just regular canvas. It would take a long time. So instead of using a regular canvas like this, we have a little library that I recommend all the time, which is called CreateJS. we're going to be using the CreateJS library to make our little game. And the libraries, it's a group of libraries, a suite of libraries that it gives us. It's been created by the same guy who made Flash all that long time ago, right? Grant Skinner. He's awesome. He has his own company. And Grant Skinner also is, I think he's working on Flutter, and he's working on a bunch of really new libraries that are really awesome. But this library, this CreateJS suite of libraries, has 4 libraries inside of it. One of them is easel.js, and it looks like at your canvas like it's an easel that you can draw on. You can do animations, you can do all kinds of stuff in here. We're going to use this library. Tween Js allows you to do things like in-betweens. That's where tween comes from. It allows you to do more animations. It also allows you to move things around the screen a little bit easier and so on if you wanted to use this. Hardly use this library, to be honest with you. I use this from scratch, and sometimes if I need optimization, I go with Tween Js. Sound.js enables things like actual sounds, MP3 files to be played on the canvas, and Preload.js allows us to preload all of our images so that it doesn't take long for our application to work. Okay, so that's those 4 libraries. We're going to load these 4 libraries now using Yarn. Okay, so the way it works again is I'm going to open up a new PowerShell window, and nothing's going to change here yet. We're going to go into my app.ts. This is where we're going to do it. But first we're going to install the libraries like we normally do in my index.html. And I'm going to put some comments here in a second. And I'm going to put this up on GitHub too, once I download and install the libraries, because it takes time. So the first thing we do is a yarn init. Okay, if you have to have yarn installed, that's the assumption, right? I'm just going to hit enter, 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 enter all the way down. Okay, I don't care about that. I just want a package.json file. And what Yarn does is it creates a little file for me. COMP125, M2020. You have to put this also be a lowercase, and this is less than 11. Okay. License is MIT, sure. And we're missing a bunch of other things like the developer name, and we don't care about that right now. All right. I'm going to yarn add now, and I want to yarn add the libraries. So here are the libraries, my friends. Easel.js. I'm gonna add them all at once, right? Tween Js, Sound.js, right, as well as Preload.js, and then press enter. It's gonna find those libraries and it's gonna attach them right here. There we go. That right there will give you so much power. You wouldn't believe what this is going to do for us, because this gives us a lot of pre-done libraries for us instead of writing it from scratch to make something more interactive here. Okay, so Easel, Preload, Sound, and Tween. And you know what? I also want the code hinting for TypeScript, so I get good code hinting, so it helps me write this stuff as opposed to writing from scratch. So the next part is I'm going to use yarn add and then at types. So yarn add at types slash Easel.js at types Preload.js at types, right? Sound.js at types Tween Js. I'm just putting it in order that I got here. And then minus minus dev, which is a very important line, which means it'll become a developer dependency, not a project dependency. These are required. This is not required. It's just for me. So it downloads these things and puts them in place. Notice the differences. The dev dependency says that we know about Easel.js 1.00, but not of 1.02, which means we're a bit behind. That means there's some parts of our library for TypeScript which will not know about this. Look at Preload. Preload is way behind from a TypeScript perspective. Here's the Preload library now. Here's where you were with TypeScript before. Same thing with Sound.js. So not these libraries are a little old, and this is what you're going to get sometimes when you convert from JavaScript to TypeScript. You're going to get sometimes people, this is a community driven thing, and you don't get sometimes the full support. This is still going to be okay for us, guys. Do not worry. We have our node modules. Yes, we have types. We have Easel, Preload, Sound, and Tween. Let's add them in to our index.html, and then we'll put this up on GitHub. So here what I want to do is make some comments. These are our third-party libraries. Okay, and what we're going to do here is we're going to load script source, and we're going to say /node modules / easel first. That's important. And then under easel.js we want lib, and then easel.js.min.js. I'm just going to make this a little larger right now, so that way we can see this. Okay, so you guys can follow along. And then I'm going to do the next one, script source /node modules / and then I want Tween Js next. Lib tweenjs.min.js. Okay. Script source /node modules, and then I want to do sound, then preload. Sound.js, oops. Sound.js, then lib, and you can see that that's going to be soundjs.min.js. And the last one is preload. Okay, you should have all these too. And let's put some more comments. So this is our custom application code. That's what this is. We're going to write our own code. And this is our canvas. Okay. And up here, this is our CSS. Okay. All the same stuff we've kind of done before, except for this part. Notice there's no bootstrap. We're not doing bootstrap because we're not going to have standard elements. We're not going to have a menu. We're just going to make a little thing in here. All right. There's no font awesome. None of that. Okay, this is a great place to put it up on GitHub. I'm going to clear the screen and put git init, git add dot, git commit -m initial commit. This is all stuff we've seen before and done before together. Okay, and now I need a repository to point to on GitHub, so I need to make that. So I'm going to go back to here. Wow. And make a new repository, public, okay, less than 11. I grab these last two lines of code, and away we go. Now this is going to be up on GitHub for you. Please pull it down right now. So if you haven't been able to follow along or you couldn't do what I'm doing, this is an important step. I'm just going to take this GitHub link right here and put it up on our eCentennial page so that we have everything that you need to get going. So make a new link, new link. GitHub link for week 11. So this way you have it. And you can always refer back to this. Okay? As we go forward. Are you with me? We're just setting up. I got a check mark from Steve. Thank you, Steve. Got a check mark from Amanda. Thank you, Amanda. Gonna wait another minute or so you guys are up to speed with me. Now, because we're gonna get interesting now in a sec. This so far is things we've done before, right? We've connected libraries to our index.html before, and now we're gonna do more. Okay. All right. So it looks like other people are just watching. We'll continue. So we've got our very simple site structure right now, and I have a app.js that I'm using and an app.ts that I'm going to code in. So please go to your app.ts file to go from here. Next, we're going to use our ify structure to hide our code. So we're going to say something like function. We're going to do our ify. We've done this before. Nothing different there. Window.add event listener. We're going to wait for the load event, and we're going to start our start function. Guess what? Our start function doesn't exist, and TypeScript says, wait, cannot find start. If you did this with JavaScript, it would say, sure, I'll do what you tell me to do. Here we can say function start returns void, and inside of our function start, let's just start off by doing a couple things. The first thing I want to do is in my start function, I'm going to describe a console log. We're going to say app started. Oops. And let's look at our console over here in the app. Connection refused. Why? It's probably stopped. It did. There we go. Sorry. There we go. So app started. We're all connected like normal. Okay, here's where the fun starts. So number one, we need to get a reference to our HTML5 Canvas, this thing here, which has an ID of Canvas. A couple ways to do this, right? One way to do it is we're gonna define it here, right? So we're gonna say that let canvas equal to a. There's two ways we can find an element that is of type canvas, or we can just do something like this: get document dot get element by ID, right, of canvas. Let's just get rid of this for now. All right. And when we do this, it says, hey, that's our canvas element, right? And what instead of writing a context for our canvas and all that kind of stuff, what CreateJS does is it has something called a stage. Okay. So again, let's go back to that CreateJS documentation. CreateJS is amazing documentation, by the way. You don't have to worry about it telling you or helping you to do what you want to do. You want to look at the easel.js link, and if you're going to go to the docs for easel.js, then you're going to see a quick start for easel.js. Take a look. It creates something called a stage. And a stage is like a container inside of the canvas element. Okay? It's a logical container, which means if I was going to draw this thing for a second, we have our HTML5 canvas. All right, so let's suppose our HTML5 canvas is this. So here's our HTML5 canvas element, right? That's on the outside, okay? And then on the inside, you have a logical container that we use for CreateJS. And I'm just going to change the color here, so we'll make it, I don't know, blue or something. We have a logical container in here, right? And this logical container in here, when I say logical, I mean it's in code only, right? And this is a stage. And we're just going to call it the CreateJS stage object. That's what it is. So it's like a container that's inside of the HTML5 canvas, and we're going to reference the stage. Everything that we're going to put on the canvas, we're going to go through the stage. The stage is, in effect, going to be the canvas for your purposes. Okay? So HTML5 canvas is the element. CreateJS stage is the place we're going to put it, our stuff. We're going to use this logical way of connecting to the canvas. Okay? So the way to do that is, let me just grab that other file so you can see it. The way to do that is to create a reference to the stage, and we're going to say this. We're going to say let stage, right, as an example. We're going to do it in here first, is equal to a new CreateJS. Notice that CreateJS comes up because of TypeScript. CreateJS dot, and then stage. I get good code hinting, remember? And I want to pass in a canvas element. Now, if I pass in canvas, it's going to complain. It's going to say, whoa, dude, what are you giving me here? You're giving me what you say is a canvas, but it says that, first of all, CreateJS is unknown. Let's just make it so that we do know what CreateJS is. There we go. It says, hey, dude, what are you giving me? This is an HTML element. It's not a canvas, right? And what we can do is we can cast it as a HTML5 canvas element. When we do that, it won't complain anymore. We can, if we hover over this, it'll say that this is a stage, and it's of type CreateJS.stage. Don't worry about what it says here. We shouldn't be getting this here. It's actually just a, I don't know what this is kind of thing. When I do this, it doesn't change anything here. Okay. So right now, remember what's happening is it's trying to transpile. It's taking my code from this, and in my app.js, it's translating it into just regular JavaScript. That's what it's doing. Okay. Wonderful. Cool, cool. All right, so now what I want to do in here, now that I have a reference to the stage is going to be something that we want to update. Think about me if I want to show something on the stage, I want to erase this dry erase board and redraw it. And I want to redraw it a bunch of times per second. So we need another function. And I'm going to call this function update. If you've done, by the way, any kind of Unity work before, if you're a Unity programmer, you'll notice this structure. That's why I've always started with start and update. So update, this function here is going to trigger a bunch of times every second. Let's call these a bunch of times frames. And a frame is going to last or live a certain amount of milliseconds. There's 1,000 milliseconds for every second. And the stage is going to update or erase itself and redraw itself a certain amount of times per second. We've talked about this for people who have me for Linux. We've talked about frames as a number of milliseconds of delay. Okay, so we're going to call this update a bunch of times, and to do this, we're going to use something called a ticker. So we're going to say CreateJS, hey CreateJS, right? I want that ticker, right? And I want the frame rate that I want to assign to the ticker as 60 frames per second. So this is 60 FPS, 60 frames per second. So that means that my frame rate is going to trigger every 16.667 milliseconds. Okay, approximately. So that's a very short time frame. And we're going to say that the ticker is almost like a clock. And the ticker ticks. Every time it ticks every 16 milliseconds, like on an interval. Tick, 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 every 16 milliseconds, right? Well, every time it ticks, I want to call the update function. So the way we can do that is with CreateJS again. We can say CreateJS.ticker.on. On is a short form for add event listener for CreateJS. On tick, I want to call the update function. So I'm saying, hey, CreateJS, go to your ticker object, add event listener. On is actually a rewrite of on add event listener, so it's okay to use this thing. Tick, on every tick, every time this thing is ticking, right, like a clock, right, call the update function as a callback. Call this function. So that means this function is going to be called asynchronously, right, 60 times per second, or every 16 milliseconds, which is pretty fast. Okay. I'm going to call the stage update. I want to update the stage every time I call the update function. Okay. But this update function doesn't know anything about the stage because I've defined stage in here. I could put it out here, but that means it'd be global. Or I could pass it into the update function here. But the problem is this update function doesn't take a any kind of parameter. So the right thing to do is put it up here. So these are going to be considered like globals. Function scoped variables. So we're going to say let stage be here. And what we're going to do to help us with code hinting, right, is we're going to say that stage is of type CreateJS.stage. Stage is of type, colon is of type CreateJS.stage. Okay? You can see that doesn't affect everything. And again, don't worry about these little curly underlines. If you don't get them, that's great. So that means in my update function, now stage exists in the global space, right? And I can say stage.update. Okay? So that means that the stage, the update function of the stage is going to redraw what I have here 60 times per second. Okay? This is my application structure by default. I call the event listener when I load my page. It calls the start. I set up my canvas for the first time, right? I cast it as an HTML5 Canvas element so that it knows that it's a Canvas element, not a regular element. I pass my Canvas element as a reference to my stage object, which is just something that I'm getting from CreateJS. Logical container, that's all it is, right? And then I set up my frame rate. My frame rate is 60 frames per second. Okay? Every time the ticker, which is an object that's always on CreateJS, every time it ticks, I call the update function asynchronously, and it keeps ticking. Update, 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 every frame. All right, are you with me with this code? We haven't done anything yet. We're just set up. I got a check mark. I got a couple check marks. I'm good. I'm happy. You're going to be excited about what happens next. Okay, thank you. The next part is we need something to show here. Let's put some text in there, like a hello world. Come on, we always do hello worlds, right? We'll do a hello world today, right? So up in the stage, above where the scope variables are, I'll just clear that up. We're going to make a new object called a CreateJS.text object. So here, I'm going to say let, we'll call it a welcome label or hello label. Let hello label be of type CreateJS.text. Okay? So the text object is actually, think about this as a way of converting fonts into pixels. That's what we're going to do in a second. Cool. What I want to do is after I'm done doing my start, when I'm done, my application is done starting. So I'm going to put this up here actually. I want to call some kind of main method. And my main method, which is down here, is what's going to be called by my start method. So main is going to be called here. So it does this stuff, it sets up, this is more of a configuration. So this is config and initialization. That's what this does. This is called every frame, So any animation you want to do, you do it in here. Okay? And main is where kind of our functionality happens. So call it main logic. Okay? Or say the app logic or our game logic goes in here. So far, nothing spectacular. The only thing that we've used for TypeScript is void, right? That's all we've done. We've also defined these two things up here and in the global space of our function. Not outside here, but in here. And here, I want to create a new object. I want to say that hello label is equal to a new CreateJS.text object. The text object takes the following things. Look, it tells you. It gives you string for the text, and a font and a color. Okay. So the string is going to be hello world, obviously. The font, we're going to use Consolus, why not? And we're going to make it 40 pixels. Now, it's actually the other way around. It's 40 pixels Consolus. I think it's size and then type. Like so. And then we're going to put in color. Color is going to be hexadecimal. So we're going to say that the color is 000000 for black. And then the other option is, there's no other option. We've kind of done it all. So that is my text object. Again, if I save this thing, you're going to see a couple things. One, if I hover over hello label, you see a text, but here we see nothing. Why? We instantiated the object, we created it, but we never did anything with it. In order for us to see anything on our stage, we need to connect it to the stage as a child object. Think about it as a node that's going to be hanging off of the stage. So example, back to this. If I want to put something on my stage, I need to make it a child of the stage object. Almost think about this as another object inside this container. So if I was going to put a text object in here, let's make it so that it is a square. Let's say I want to put a text object in here. This text object, let's make it a different color. This text object is a child of the stage object. It sits inside of the stage. So we need to use add child. Okay. This add child method is what we're going to use to add an object to the stage every single time. If we don't use add child, it will not show on the stage. Okay. So how do we do this? We're going to go here. I'm just going to make this bigger for now. And we're going to say, hey, stage, add child. What? I want to add child my hello label. I want to add my hello label to the stage. That's what I'm saying. And let me bring back that other one. You should see something now. That's something that looks like this. Hello world. Take a look at it. This up here, notice I cannot, no matter how much I try, I cannot highlight it. This hello world right here, these are pixels, my friends. Pixels. I can't do anything with them whatsoever. Okay? But pixels give me control. Pixels allow me to do crazy stuff. Okay? Sure. Hola mundo. No problem. I'll do that, Tiago, just for you. Let's just change it for the first time, right? Because you say we're going to do it. Hola mundo. I'll spell it the same way you think about it. All right, we'll change it up. I like it. Cool. And it's 40 pixels. Look at the object that we're using. 40 pixels. I'm just going to close this off so we can see it. If I want to make this 60 pixels, I just change to 60 pixels, right? It's big. Now here's the problem. What position is this object? This object is positioned at the top left corner of the stage. Why? Because by default, this object is at the 0, 0 point. That's where I'm drawing it. I haven't specified where I want this object to be. So if I want to put this object in the middle of my page, you'd be mistaken to think that I could say, if this is 800 by 600, you would think that if I put it at 400 and 300, that it'd be in the middle. And it would be, but it wouldn't draw the way you think. Let's try this out. So if I said, I want to take my hello label and I want to look at the X value, the X coordinate, and I want to change the X coordinate to 400, and I want to look at my hello label.y coordinate and change that to 300, and if I press save, then bam, it's like way over there. Actually, I think it made it 640 by 480, so that would be like 320 by 240. Now look, it starts there. Why? By default, it went to the right place. This is the middle of the screen. 320 by 240, right? Half the width and half the height of my container. Remember, inside of my index.html, I gave it, and my canvas was 640 by 480. We're telling it to go to 320 and 240, which is half of the height and half of the width. And that's where it's going to start drawing the pixels, my friends. Drawing the pixels. This is not text anymore, right? Okay, so how do I get it back this way? Well, there's a couple things to note. One thing is there's something called a registration value, all right? And the registration value, let's suppose that I have an object like this green object here. Anything you want to put, a button, text, whatever, right? The green object, if you think about it, has a registration value of 0, 0. So by default, the registration value is at the corner up here, all right? Let me undo that change and make it black again. The registration value is here, right? So what I want is the registration value to be here. I want it to start drawing from here. So this is where it's going to draw, and I want it to offset itself so that it's centered. So what I can do is I can march this way, some value x, and march down some value y, so I can get to the center. I could do that way, right? And the way I can do this is by using something called regex and reg-y. It's built into the to all of these objects. Again, you can look at the documentation. We will in a second. So if I say hello label.regex, right? My registration mark, I'm moving my center from where my object starts to draw. I'm moving it at the center of my object. But how do I know what the center of my object is? How do I know how many pixels Hola Mundo, right, is going to take up? I know it's 60 pixel size, but I can't calculate it on my own. There's no way. Well, what we can do is we can use something called get measured width. Hello label dot get measured width. It measures the width, right? And I want to multiply this by 0.5. So whatever the measured width is of my label, I want to cut it in half, right? Because I want the middle. That's what I want, right? The middle of my label. So if I was to do just this and save, you're going to see immediately what happens is it's centered. It's centered. Not quite, though. It's still a little bit too low because we haven't taken care of the Y registration value. It's still the top left corner for the Y, right? So let's do that too. Hello label dot reg-y is equal to hello label dot get measured height multiplied by 0.5. And if we did this and we did this, then you can see now it's slightly higher. And that, my friends, is roughly in the middle of my screen. Are you with me? So think about what we just did. Thank you for that, for people that have said yes. Think about what we just did. We created a context, a 2D context, and we've injected pixels. We've translated our glyphs, because each of these letters in any kind of font is considered a glyph. We've taken these glyphs, translated them into pixels, and injected them on the screen inside of our canvas. Again, these are not, I want to say it again, these are not text objects necessarily. It's not something you can highlight. It's an object, but it's not something you can select. All right, cool. Now, wouldn't it be nice if I spun this around a bunch of times just to be fun? And this is kind of our standard practice when we make this thing. So if I was going to spin this hello label, where would I do it? Here, in the update function. In the update function, I want to call my hello label. And I want to say that I want to rotate my hello label by 5 pixels every frame, or 5 degrees, sorry, every frame is what this is going to do. And if I save it, here we go. It's that simple. Using Apple's motto there. You should be able to make this turn to the right. Making it go the other way is as simple as rotating it left, negative. I can make it go the other way, right? Heck, you can make this bounce around if you want. It's totally up to you what you want to do. And in effect, this looks like there's animation. But actually, that's not what's happening. What's really happening, my friends, I'm just going to stop this, just comment it out. What's really happening here is I'm taking pixels. I've defined a region, a boundary, if you will, for the pixels. And I'm keeping track of this every frame. And I'm erasing everything and redrawing it by rotating it by 5 degrees every frame, the whole object. So that means that if I go back to my canvas idea, and let's suppose this is my child object, what I'm really doing is I'm saying, hey, this is a group of pixels, right? This thing here. Let's suppose this whole thing add child is too. This thing is a whole group of pixels, right? What I want to do is I want to rotate this whole thing a bunch of times over and over again. That's what I'm doing, right? And if I rotate it this way at 5 degrees every frame, I'm going to rotate it this way, 5 degrees every frame, okay? If I only did it once, if I didn't do it in the update function, let's say I did it down here somewhere. So after I add it to the stage, if I said something like, hey, hello label dot rotation, let's say it's equal to 90 degrees, right? And if I save it, and if I go back and look at it, you can see now that it's going to be drawn this way, right? Because I've told it that that's what you need to do. Rotate the entire object, the boundary of the entire object, 90 degrees. Okay? Does this make sense to you? And it should, because this is how simple it is in your mind. So, if we can do this, how do we do buttons? There is no button. Buttons don't exist. It's like the Matrix. There is no spoon. There's only you, right? So you need to add an image for the button, and we're going to do that together. I'm going to make an image. I'm going to put it up on GitHub in a second, and you can download it, or I'll put it up on eCentennial. I'm just going to use a simple application. I'm going to use Fireworks. You can use anything you want to make images. You can find images online for your assignment. You don't have to make your own stuff, okay? I'm just going to make something here from myself. Limit reached. Sign me out of other computers so I can sign you. I think I did that already. Man, I did this already. I'm pretty sure I did. That sucks. So what I want to do, because I just updated my machine. What I want to do is I want to make my button 150 pixels wide by 50 pixels tall. I'll have to fix that problem later. I'm going to make the button transparent in the background, so it'll be a PNG image, right? Here it is. Here's the button. And I want to make this button blue. So again, what I can do is I can select an image. So here's my image. I'm just going to make this with any application, by the way. You can do this with Krita, whatever. Let's make this application background blue, some blue color. I don't know, something like that. A dark blue. My boundary right now is, I'm going to put this at 0, 0. There we go. And I'm going to make it 150 by 50. 150 by 50. There we go. 150 by 50, and there's no boundary, right? And there's a black border around it. Sure, no problem. And let us make a text value in here. We'll put in a text value that says, click me, right? And you can see it's pretty pixelated. We're going to use a Consolus font. We can do it this way too, Consolus. There is no button, remember? And we'll make this size 20. 20? Yeah, 20 looks pretty good. Click me. That's our button, guys. It's not very exciting. But the background black on blue, not good choices. Let's make the background white. White on blue for click me. How about that? So we can see what it looks like. Pretty pixelated too. Yeah? Again, nothing too crazy. You can make this with any application you want. Paint, whatever. Right? Crisp anti-alias. I think that might be better if I use a crisp. And we'll save this. We'll save file, save as, and I'm not going to attach a Fireworks anything. I'm going to call this the click me button. and I'll put this on my desktop on OneDrive, and it's going to be inside my lesson 11. We need a folder for this. I want to put it in an assets folder. So let's make the assets folder. Make a new folder called assets. And inside my assets, I'm going to put a folder called images. And then my click me button is going to go in there. Save. All right, if I look at my application, now I have assets. I have my click me button. You can see what it looks like right here. Let me put this up on eCentennial so you can follow along. Not that you need to, but let's put that in there. The click me button. New. Let's see if I can just drag and drop it. I think I can. Yeah. Here. I think I can drag and drop it. There we go. Click me button's up there, so you don't have to do any work, guys. Just grab that click me button and download it. It's up on eCentennial now. Click me. And Tiago, since you said you made us do Hola Mundo, you're going to say goodbye. You're going to say goodbye world. How about goodbye cruel world? How about that? You're going to tell me that in a second. All right, so this is our button, and I want to put it up here so we can see it. And the way to do that is we're going to go to our app.js. We're not going to rotate this right now. Let's not rotate it. Okay, just to make it easy. We're going to make, for buttons, it's just a bitmap, right? So I'm going to go to my variables, and I'm going to say let, we'll call this the click me button. Click me button. We'll make it of type CreateJS dot bitmap, because that's what it is. It's like a texture or a bitmap or an image, whatever you want to call it. So this is my label. I've added to stage. This part is going to be my button. Okay. Again, total control, lots of code. So how do we do this? We can say something like click me button is equal to a new CreateJS dot bitmap, and it needs the following: an image or URL, right, which is a string or object or HTML canvas element or an HTML image element or an HTML video element. It needs something. And usually what we can do is we can pass it in a reference to where that is. Now I know where it is. It's going to be dot slash assets slash images slash, actually it should be slash assets slash images slash, and it's going to be in the click me button PNG file. That's what I think I called it. If I'm not wrong, I said it's going to be inside of assets, images, click me button.png. So remember what we did last time? We have an object, but we've never added it to the stage. So the next step we have to take is we have to add our object to the stage, right? So now we're going to say stage.addChild click me button. And just like that, just like we did before, right? We have a click me button on the top left corner of the stage. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't look like a button. It doesn't even do anything. I can't click on anything at all. Right? So I want to move this button here, and I want it to be centered. That means I need to do regex and reg-y again on it. Let's do that. So just like before, we're going to say that I want to say that click me button dot regex. And this time, instead of measured width, it only works on text. We need to use something else. It's click me button dot get bounds dot width times 0.5, and click me button dot reg y is equal to click me button. dot getBounds dot height multiplied by 0.5. So what getBounds is it draws that rectangle. It kind of draws a rectangle around the button, and it says take the width and go to half the width and half the height, similar to what we did here with text. So this is how you redo the text registration point, and this is how you do the image registration point. If I save this now, you're going to see that half of the image is off screen because it starts drawing from here. Actually, it creates an offset, so you have to draw, kind of march back, march up. And now we have to set the x and y. We want the x coordinate to be the same, so we're going to say that click me button dot x is still going to be equal to 320 pixels. It means it's going to be the center of the screen here. See? And we want it to go down below Hola Mundo, right? So we're going to say click me button dot y, and that's going to be equal to instead of 240, which is the middle, let's drop it down to 340. And let's see how that looks. 100 pixels more. Are you with me? Adios, mundo cruel. Okay, we'll do that. Okay? So here's what I want to do now. When I click the button, when I click this button, I want the text here to change to adios, mundo cruel. I don't have the I'm sorry, I don't have the inflection for the O. That's easy to put in, but I'll do it adios without the special inflection mark. Okay, so that's what it'll be. So when I click this button, how do I click this button? Well, I can make it. I can say that, hey, click me button, dot. Now there's two ways of doing it. I can use that event listener, or I can use on. Remember, on is something that's part of CreateJS. I can say on. On is like add event listener. On, click. I want to do the following function, right? The following function. I want to change, now this is careful here how this works. I want to change my hello label dot text to be equal to adios mundo cruel. And let's just put in that's goodbye cruel world. All right? So that's when I click the button. So click me button dot on click. This is the event handler. I want to do it on inline handler. This is the listener. When I click the button, it changes. But man, what the heck? How come it did this? Well, my friends, even though I changed the text, which worked okay, it did not change the registration point. The registration mark of the regx and reg-y measured it before. It measured it up here once. It measured it based on hola mundo. It did not measure it based on adios mundo cruel. Right? It did not do that. So what we need to do is we need to, before we change the text, we have to create the object again. We have to almost do this whole thing again. And now you're going to say to me, wait, Tom, what do you mean? Well, the problem that we have, my friends, is if I don't do this, right? I mean, sure, I can do this, or I can redo it completely, or I can do this here and then rejig it. I can do this whole thing again. How about that? This part. You won't notice a shift too much. It'll just be, I'll have to do it again. I have to remeasure how big it is, so that way it's positioned correctly. So if I click it now, you can see now it's been remeasured. And it works. Now, here's what I want to do. When I click on it again, I want it to shift back to Hola Mundo, right? How do I do that? Well, I can check. I can say if hello label dot text, right? I can do this long way. If that is equal to, because it can still read normally, right? If it's equal to adios mundo, it has to be exact, mundo cruel, if it's already this, right, then, I mean, this is just regular JavaScript now, right? Or instead of doing it this way, right, I could do it in a different way, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to put this in here for now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this whole part again and put it in here. And if it's equal to this, I want it to go back to this. So I'll just copy paste. By the way, guys, I do the exact same exercise with my folks, the folks that I work with for iOS. They do the exact same app, but they use SpriteKit. SpriteKit and CreateJS and a bunch of other frameworks are identical. Once you learn one of these, you can do it in any framework, where you can do it here on iOS, on Android, anywhere. Okay? So I want to do this. So I want to say, if it's already adios, it's going to say hola. If it's hola, it's going to say adios. It's going to keep shifting back and forth. It's going to toggle between the two, right? Let's see if that's true. Click, 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 click. And it's going to keep doing that over and over again forever. And we can make it rotate too at the same time, not just clickable. The button is clickable, but this thing can rotate. And it can change color. And it can do whatever we want it to do. Let's put that rotation back into play. Right? And it can still do it because it doesn't matter. We're changing the object. Now notice how the text goes behind the button and the button seems to be floating on top of the text. Well, that's the way we drew it. So there's something called the painter's algorithm that we're going to be using when we make our little slot machine. Okay? The painter's algorithm. And the way that works is like this. Imagine if I've got this object, and when I paint the object, I'm just going to kind of imagine I'm a painter now. I don't know. Sure. And when I paint objects, right? I mean, I can't really like paint behind them, right? I got to paint in order. So let's suppose I've painted CreateJS stage, and let's say I want to put an object, let's say something like a circle, right? And let's say the circle is going to be black. I put a circle there, black, right? And then the circle, let's fill it in, right? So this circle's filled in nicely. And I want to paint on top of the circle. So then, but instead of a circle, I don't know, I want to use a square now, right? Well, in real life, the painter would paint on top of the circle, right? So what he would do, or she would do, is, let's make a different color. Let's make it green, right? He would take an object, right? And he would paint on top of this thing here. So he'd paint on top of it. Now, he would also paint this part of the circle. Instead of black, it'd be green, right? And let's see if we can do that. Right? So something like that. So notice that the black is, we had to draw this first, and then we drew the square on top of the circle, right? So now we have something called layer order. The thing we draw first is the thing that's drawn behind the thing that we draw after. So everything we draw next, if I draw some other object, let's suppose I want to draw, instead of a circle, I draw some kind of polygon shape, and let's do the same thing. Let's just, kind of do one of these weird polygons, right? There we go. And maybe I should have made it, instead of green, let's make it some other color, like black. Let's try one more time. Okay, and let's suppose that my inner filling is something else, like red. Right? Layer order, my friends. Layer order. So first the black circle was drawn, then the green square, and then this weird polygon, which kind of looks like a weird coffin. I don't know. A red coffin that's fat. Okay? So that's kind of the way it's being drawn. And if that's the case, then that's what this is happening. This text object is pixels, my friend, pixels. And so it gets drawn behind these other pixels. right? This is not a button. This is an image that I've loaded into the screen. The Z index, correct. There is a Z index. But we don't need to talk about the Z index. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be just layering it in layer order for us, for our example. Okay? Now, one thing that would make it nice is that when we hover over the image, it gives us some kind of hover effect. We can do this. We can listen for mouse events, right? And we're going to do that in our code. This is the last thing we'll do today. All right, so here's our object. And let's just make this so that it is here. Let's make this fill in here. And let's just stop it from rotating because it's driving me crazy. Right? And what I want to do is when I hover over the button, I want it to kind of be semi-transparent. That's what I want. In order for me to make mouse effects work, in the stage area, when I start defining stuff, I need to define that the stage itself has kind of mouse button capability. So we're going to say stage.mouse, and we're going to say, like, now where it says mouse enabled, right? If I type the word mouse, right, there's something called enable mouse over. Enable mouse over, it needs a frequency because it's very expensive. The way mouse over works, it's a collision event, right? I take my pointer, it has a position on the screen, and as I mouse over something, it collides with this bounding box, right? So it's expensive, and we don't want to check it more than, let's say, 20 frames per second, okay? We need to have this enabled in order for me to do a hover event, okay? Otherwise, we won't detect hover events at all. They'll be ignored. Okay, back down to the button. We're going to say the click me button dot on another event, mouse over. We're going to do an anonymous listener like before. Let's just do it the new way, right? An anonymous listener for mouse over. We're going to say that the click me button dot alpha transparency is going to be equal to 0.7, let's say. This is like 70% opaque. Okay, that's what it's going to be. Or 30% transparent, depending on how you look at it. Potato, potato. And on mouse out, that's the other event, mouse out, we're going to say that it goes back to 100%. So 100% or 0% transparent. This is 30% transparent. So it's going to give us like a hover effect, all right? Let's try that out and see if it works. Meow, 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 meow. I even gave you the sound effects too. Meow. All right, there we go. Nice. So it looks like buttons, huh? It's not really a button. It's really an image that I'm changing the alpha transparency to 70% when I'm hovering over. Guess what's happening? When I click onto it, it looks like something's happening now. And my friends, we've created our first button and label in HTML5 Canvas using the CreateJS library easel.js. That's where we're going to stop for today. Okay? So you're going to say, wait, Tom, that's like so slow to get going. We have so much work to do to make a slot machine. Hell yeah, we have a lot of work to do when it comes to making our slot machine. But I'm going to give you the code. We're going to start off slow, and I'm going to train you how to use this thing, this library. So by the end, if you want to make your own HTML5 game, and I mean anything, right? We can do it. But there's only so much that I can do in the 2-week period that we have, right? Normally what I do is I have a whole course dedicated to web game, right? It's called web game programming, COMP125. So the only thing I can do is give you a flavor of how this works. We can create simple ads and animations in here, but nothing that's too crazy. And that's why I've decided to do the the slot machine. Now you can go ahead and code your own slot machine if you want from scratch, like I've told you. Or if you wait for me next week, we'll define a couple of new objects. One of them is going to be the button object, and the other one is going to be the label object. Buttons and labels. That's all you need for this application to run. By the way, this stuff that I've shown you right here for buttons and labels, they're the only thing you need for your final test. Your final test is going to have buttons and labels and images, and that's it. If you can do buttons and labels and manipulate what you see right here on your final test, you'll be fine. Okay? Let's put this up on GitHub. So here you can see we have some objects. We're going to say added simple buttons, a button and label for the demo. I wish I had more time with you guys, and if we did, I would make 2 new classes, because what if I wanted more than one button, right? It'd be pretty crazy, right? Imagine if I had to do this every single time I made a button and all this. That's a lot of code. But if I make a class, then the button class will allow me to make whatever I want. And also, do I really want to write the text like this and make a bunch of button objects, like start button, a spin button? I could, if it's graphical, I could totally do it. Or I can put the label, and the label could be on top of the button, right? It's just a background for the image. In fact, I could make it so that there's no image at all. I can draw a rectangle, and I can fill in the background with CreateJS. There's lots of ways of doing it. All right, you've got my code, and we've talked about CreateJS. We've talked about TypeScript. Notice that in order for us to do all this stuff, we've been using TypeScript the whole time, silently in the background. And this is what it's done. It looks identical because we haven't used any real features of TypeScript. We're using TypeScript really right now just for code hinting, to help us out, to tell us that there might be a problem. And that's it. The rest is something you could have done in pure JS, and it'd be no problem. Okay, questions for you guys now, before we stop for the day. I'm excited about this. I don't know about you guys, but this kind of stuff makes me happy. Why? Because we're going beyond the bounds of what we can normally do with HTML5 and CSS. We are going beyond. We can do whatever we want now inside the Canvas element. And like I said, the stuff that I'm talking about here could be good inspiration for you guys if you want to do an app for Android or iOS, or maybe an ad that you want to put together that has animation later. In order for me to animate this, think about this. I want to move my button around. I want to move it from left to right, okay? And I want it to bounce from left and right. How difficult can that be? I move it to the left. When it hits a certain part, I move it to the right. When it hits a certain part, I move it to the left again. And it keeps on moving back and forth. It looks like there's animation. There's no animation. I'm just erasing and redrawing everything. Okay, guys. That's it for me for today. I'll take your question, Joseph, in a second. I'm just going to stop streaming right now, and if you need anything, I'm going to answer some questions after class. But remember, we're going to see each other again on Monday. That's the next time we get together. I highly recommend start thinking about your slot machine. See if you can get some graphics, because I'm going to give you my graphics, but it'd be nice if you made your own. So if I looked at, let's say, slot machine images, right? And if I looked online for images, you might see some slot machines that you might want to use, right? Something that you can use for your game, right? So you might want to design something that you might find. For example, if I wanted to say slot machine symbols, right? You might want to be able to find some of these symbols to use in your game. These are just images that we're going to show on the screen. When our code shows something, we're going to flash these images on the screen. It's pretty simple stuff that we're going to do. So you may want to do that before next Monday. If not, we'll do it together. Guys, thank you so much. I'm going to stop streaming now, and I'll see you guys on Monday, and I'll take questions. and this I can help you solve errors.